What's going on? Oh no! Crash! Look out!
Hi, I'm Shane Satterfield, and welcome to our video review for Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex for the Xbox. If you remember correctly, right around Christmas time of last year, this game was released for the PlayStation 2, and yes, this game has been ported to the Xbox. Not a big surprise there. The story behind the game is a simple one, and like most other 3D platforming games, that's the case in this one as well. And basically the whole struggle in the story centers around 4 elemental masks, and basically Crash wants to get the masks before Cortex can get the masks to animate a creature that he's created called Crunch. So basically, as you go through the game and you defeat bosses, you'll actually defeat or destroy one of the elemental masks. And that's basically the whole premise that drives the game. Now, as far as the gameplay is concerned, The Wrath of Cortex is just like every other Crash Bandicoot game before it. And what I mean by that is that instead of being a free-roaming game where you can go wherever you want, basically you play the game on rails. So you have, let's say, an imaginary tunnel that you're forced to go down, and you're always forced to go in that one direction. Now, granted, there are a couple times where you can find some pads that'll take you to bonus areas. For the most part, you start at the beginning of the level, you make your way through it, and that's how each level proceeds. In addition to playing as Crash, you also get to pilot a number of vehicles through the game. Crash has a Jeep, he has a submarine, he has a plane that kind of looks like a bee, he has a ball that he can get into and kind of roll around the levels. And you also get to control Coco, which is his sister. Now, Crash's levels are typical Crash fare. Basically, you have your spin, you have your jump, and basically the whole game is laid out as far as like how you proceed is a trial and error system. So basically, you come through, a portion of the level, you'll figure out how to get through it, and you'll get to this one enemy who will kill you. As soon as you die, you realize how you're supposed to get through it. The next time you go through the level, you'll make it through that enemy, and then you'll come up to another hard enemy, and you'll die, or a hard platform jump, and you'll die. And then you have to go back, you go through all the things that you learned before, and then you get past that one. And basically that trial and error gameplay, which was present in all the previous Crash games, is also present in this one, and to be honest with you, it's starting to get a bit old. As far as Coco's levels are concerned, they're definitely a lot more straightforward as far as platforming games go. Basically, you're doing a lot less attacking and a lot more jumping. And on top of it all, the camera also makes the game a lot harder than it should be. There are many times where you have a very simple platform jump. You're just jumping from one platform to the next, but because the camera is kind of off in a cockeyed view, and maybe there's a pole in front of it just obscuring your view that you can't see, that makes it impossible to make the jump without dying a few times and experimenting. So, like past Crash games, the whole game centers around trial and error, and it may have been okay back in 1998 when the franchise debuted and they were just kind of getting their heads around 3D, but now, really, this is unacceptable, and hopefully for the next Crash game, they'll actually work around this and bring the series up to the rest of the games in its genre. As far as graphics are concerned, it's kind of crazy because when you look at the Xbox version of Crash Bandicoot, The Wrath of Cortex, and then you look at the PlayStation 2 version, it's virtually impossible to tell the difference. In fact, I don't know that I would be able to, and I played both games at length. So basically, along with that comes the good and the bad. And the good is that Crash looks great. Definitely the best he's ever looked in any of his games. His curves are nice and flowing. His animation is nice and smooth, and he comes to life in this game more than any of his games before this one. But the negative is that the game was originally designed for the PlayStation 2, so a lot of the enemies and the environments are kind of low poly. They're not really fleshed out. They're kind of crude looking, and the textures are flatly shaded. And granted, that does give it kind of that cartoon look. Now, the PlayStation 2 version of the game wasn't exactly ugly. It did do a lot of things well. It had nice reflections, it had nice environmental mapping, it had nice particle effects, and even the physics system for the game was pretty decent. But for an Xbox game, it definitely falls a little short of average, or maybe just right around average. It has all the things the PlayStation 2 version has, but it has nothing extra. So if you're kind of deciding between the two games, and you have Crash for the Xbox, and you have Crash for the PS2 in the bargain bin, definitely pick up Crash for the PS2 in the bargain bin, because there's really no difference between the two games. If you're a fan of the Crash Bandicoot games, then The Wrath of Cortex will, it'll probably be definitely right up your alley. You're not going to be surprised by anything, you're not going to say, wow, this is something totally new. You're just going to know that this is another Crash Bandicoot game. Granted, there's a few extra vehicles in the game that may not have been in other Crash games, and you get to control his sister, which just ends up being more annoying than fun. But in the end, it's pretty much just the same old thing. And hopefully for the next installment of the series, they'll try to do something a little new, and they'll try to bring it up with its contemporaries where that's concerned. With that said, if you're expecting a Crash Bandicoot game, and you're a big fan of the series, and you're just waiting for it to look a little better, then The Wrath of Cortex is definitely worth checking out.
Crash Bandicoot, my old nemesis. How the heck are you? Still gathering crystals? Old habits die hard, don't they?